Hello and welcome once again, and today we'll learn further related to this topic, style of gardening, part 2. The next type of gardening that we're gonna discuss is about the French garden and Persian garden. Firstly, we'll discuss about the French garden. French garden, it started in the earlier to 16th century, and the French garden were based on Italian garden style, strictly with stiff formality and exactness. Okay, and the garden style was intricate and artificial. It's totally intricate and artificial. And the French people were tired of the formal Italian style, which was very remote from nature. Okay, so until this time, the French garden were nothing, but it was just copies of Italian style. This happened during the earlier 16th century. Okay, so it was like just a copy of Italian style. So now it come to modification. So who did that? Okay, so however, the new style of gardening, okay, the new style which is known as the French style, was due to the effort of the like Le Notre. Okay, he is a garden designer. Okay, he is like a garden designer or a landscaper, and then this Le Notre who served in the royal garden. Okay, royal garden, and then from which year? From royal garden of Louis in the 14. Okay, royal garden of Louis the 14. Okay, from 1643 to 1700 AD. And his main creation is the gardens at Versailles. You can see in the picture that is from the left side. Okay, this garden of Versailles, it have the avenue which are memorable for their tremendous length and width. Okay, and his first masterpiece was the garden of Van Lake Vicomte. Okay, from which he had to remove 3 villages to create his vista. And the main moral of French garden style of Le Notre was to teach the lesson how to think big. Okay, so this keep in mind that what is the main moral of a French garden according to Le Notre. It was to teach the lesson of how to think big. Okay, so this is one example that is the garden at Versailles. Now, and then its main features. Okay, the main features or the features of French garden is that the characterized by a system of row through the wood linking good looking features leading to different vista. And it is like the garden give an effect of like spaciousness and simplicity, like we have already discussed in the principle of landscaping. Okay, so that is like included here. And then like it appear closely related to the nature. Okay, and gardens with tremendous length and width. And the formal garden is in perfection in French gardening. Okay, so formal gardening is mostly adapt in this type of gardening. Okay, formal gardening where you have to see the perfect this one proportion, everything you have to see nicely. Okay, and then at a correct length, width, everything. So like particular trees, particular flowers, like that. And now we will discuss about the next type of garden, that is the Persian garden. So Persian garden is one of the oldest styles of gardening in the Persian style. Okay, it's the Persian style. Okay, one of the oldest style of gardening is the Persian style. And the Persian style and the Japanese style are based on the respective ideas of heaven. Okay, why I'm saying like that? Because the Persian style is strictly formal and symmetrical. Okay, so earlier there were 2 types of Persian garden, that is the royal hunting garden and the paradise garden. that it will be in more detail, I'll give you in the notes. Okay, so and then the main features. Okay, the main features of Persian garden is that based on idea of heaven. Okay, they will make it more like heavenly, like more pleasing. Okay, so, and this is also strictly formal and symmetrical and beautiful architectural work, and laid out after cutting terraces and water flowing canals. Okay, and here you can see an example of a Persian garden, that is the garden the garden in Taj Mahal. Okay, that is a Persian type of gardening. So these are some example, and then we will discuss more about the gardening. So, and now we'll discuss about the Chinese garden. So in Chinese garden, the first thing to be observed in the gardens of China is the absence of symmetry. Like here it's totally unsymmetrical, like nothing is like equal. Like informal type of gardening, you just think that it is totally informal, like there is no specific proportion or balance or simplicity. But the main aim here is that the China it's also considered to be one of the first place. Okay, China is also considered to be one of the first place where plants were cultivated for ornamental purposes. And like for example, that is a Suzhou city. Like you can see here, there is one example of Suzhou city, which is located in the Yangtze River Valley. This garden practices not changes. Okay, it hasn't changes since 200 BC due to relative stability, fear and religious respect for nature, and lack of influences of other culture. They regarded garden as an art or forms. And some of the important features are that, firstly, their gardens are designed in relation to religion and to have ideal fellowship with nature. You can see here in this picture there is a circles. Circles in the Chinese garden symbolizes what? It symbolizes the paradise. And their gardens are rich with native plants and flowers which are available abundantly. Like totally the plants which are native, which is present there only in that particular area, in that particular country. And they follow constant flow between positive and negative, that is for example, night and day and rock and water. And fourthly, rock are used to symbolize mountains. For example, you can see here there are rocks. Okay, rocks from this side. Okay, you can see the rocks are used to symbolize mountains in the garden, as they reveal mountains. Best rocks are of eroded limestone, and light and shadow are important factors in placement of such rock. Now the other four main features are, that is the water is used to create island in the garden, and the elements such as bridges, pavilion, paths, walls are also present in the gardens. And the common plant, like you can see here in the picture, the common plants in Chinese garden are chrysanthemum, bamboos and peonies. These are some of the example. And last but not the least about the features of Chinese garden is what I'll say, they symbolizes, that is some of here, like you can see the pine tree. In the pine tree, it symbolizes longevity and age. Okay, the age. And then the banana leaf, the banana plants. Okay, the banana plants, it symbolizes youthfulness. So these are some of the example. Now we'll learn about the Japanese garden. So, Japanese gardens are famous in the world for their unique style, natural and spiritual beauty and calmness. And they are made by the Zen Buddhists for what? For worship and meditation. They were also developed to have tea ceremony. They used to have tea ceremony and to have pleasure for members of royal families. The Japanese people are lovers of nature. Therefore, natural landscape elements of the country, that is like mountains, islands, rivers, and lakes, streams, bridges, etc., have been created. Okay, have been created in the garden in miniature. Hence, it is also known as nature in miniature. And Japanese, they continue the same style. They continue the same style for centuries, but still remain popular because they are naturalistic, is totally naturalistic, and these gardens hardly go through any strong visible changes during different season. Like if you can see in other like in other countries, because of different season, even the type of gardening also changes. But in this type of garden, that is Japanese garden, there is like very less changes. Like even if you do changes also, it's not that visible and all. So this is like a brief introduction of the Japanese garden. Now we'll move further related to its history. So, moving forward to its history, the origin of Japanese style of gardening, it goes back to the era of Empress Suiko, that is during the reign of Empress Suiko in 592 to 628 AD. And some of the main historical periods can be summarized as follows. Okay, like for example here I have mentioned Asuka period, Heian period, Kamakura period, and this one Ashikaga period, Edo period, Meiji era. Okay, these are some of the this one main historical period. Okay, where like they started recognizing this Japanese type of gardening. Like even if you can like I will give you the notes related to this period, like you can understand it more. In this Asuka period, during this period, like Nara was the capital of Japan, and Buddhism had started flourishing. The religion of Buddhism, that it has started flourishing, and after its introduction in the 1st century, and several Buddhist temples were constructed, among which Todaiji was the famous temple. Todaiji was the famous temple. Okay, where they put this like big statue of their like this Lord Buddha was kept. So in front of this garden there is a big ground planted with trees. It's planted with trees. So this is one like some illustration about the Asuka period, and even the Heian period also, which happens in the year this one 7942 like 1185 AD. Here also like the big shrine were made, okay, having large lake, bridges, and stepping stone. And like this, even in Kamakura period, like as we are moving forward, even the Japanese style is like being a bit modified. They are modifying it like more and more in a natural way. So these are some of the main historical periods. So now we'll move to the next. That is the type of gardens. So there are basically 5 important types of Japanese garden. The first is the hill garden, like you can see in this picture from the left side. It is Zukiyama Garden, which is located in Japan. So here in Japan, this style is known as Zukiyam e Niwa or Zukiyam Sanzui, meaning, what is the meaning of this Sukiyama gardens? Sukiyama means hills and waters, like you can see here, hills and even the water by the side. Now, and like here the main features is the fairly large area is required to lay out mountains and hills, and the hills is made up of one or more hill designed with earth mount. If there is no hill also, they will like what I'll say, they will make up the hill, okay, by mounting the earth. mounding the earth, and expose weather stones. Okay, stones, like you can see here in this picture. And features in hills gardens are water in the form of streams or ponds or waterfall, bridges, stones and trees, etc. And pine trees are planted to give an effect of being swept by wind. Even the pine trees are planted here in this type of this one garden. And untrimmed stepping stone are placed over the walk. And usual features of a hill garden is an island decorated by worshipping stone. Okay, worshipping stone, which is called Raitya Seki, and a lantern and a pine tree. Okay, and moving to this flat garden. So by the name only flat, you can understand that the land it is flat. So the flat garden are laid out in a flat ground without hills and ponds. Okay, and then it is known in the Japanese language. It is called Hira Niwa. Hira Niwa. And the flat garden are supposed to represent a mountain valley or a meadowland. And usual features to break monotony of a flat gardens are wells, water, basin, stone in shape of urn, stones lying close to the ground, and stepping stone and trees. And in the flat garden, the principle is to avoid strong vertical lines represented by tall pines. Okay, so these are some example, some illustration of flat garden. Moving forward to this Japanese tea garden. So like you can see here from the left side, there is a picture of a Japanese tea garden. Tea garden are like those having outer and inner garden used for serving tea to guests. Okay, it's really popular. Like you can say that tea is very popular there. Like even in India, like in some particular area, like in Kolkata also, like pan is very like it's like what I'll say is common. People eat pan, and if you come, like if a guest comes, they used to offer them. So the same way here also, it's like a tradition when people come, like suppose in if people visit, suppose in Japan, so what they do, they offer tea. So it's very common. So it is laid out based on certain principle and custom of Japanese tea ceremony. It needs a place. A place should be at least of 200 square meter for its designing. And to create an environment, of intimacy, the garden should be enclosed by fence made of bamboo. Okay, and to protect the tea garden from outside noise, it is divided into an outer garden and inner garden. Okay, so the outer garden in Japanese language is called Soto Roji, and the inner garden in the Japanese language is called Uchi Roji. So, and the outer garden, okay, is a narrow area. It's a narrow area, a waiting place with a water basin, lantern for illumination. Like it's really, what can say, it's really attractive. Okay, it's like you feel like very home feeling. And then it is laid by simply grouping and planting of the serious plants. Like you will feel that comfortness. And the inner garden is the tea house. Okay, the outer garden is the narrow area, and the inner garden is the tea house. It is subdued nature, therefore evergreen trees are planted here. Like mostly they choose the evergreen trees. And this one, the entrance of the tea house is through a low door, so that the guests have to enter in a bending position. Okay, the door is low, like it's low, and then when the guests enter, so like they have to bend. In the bending posture they have to come, simulating respect and humility, like which shows the respect and humbleness. Okay, and so this is one example of tea garden. So and the next, that is from the right side, you can see an illustration, an image of a passage garden in Japanese garden style. So here the passage garden is also known as, in Japanese language, that is Roji Niwa. It is laid out in a narrow passage, example between two houses, or approaches to buildings. Okay, some of the features are in such gardens. Okay, the layout is simple and not overcrowded. It's not overcrowded, and there is hardly any garden ornaments such as lantern, basin, or this one other man-made features like they don't put this, or they don't manufacture this mostly there. They don't construct these things like lantern or basin, okay, the basin and all, so they don't put it there. So, and the third is the common features of a passage garden. The common features of a passage garden are a few key rocks, and then slabs of stones, and some plants, and then bushy shrubs and trees are unsuitable in a passage garden. So this is also like a little bit avoided of this plantation of bushy shrub and trees. It's like even if it's planted, so it won't plant, like they won't plant that much. So this is one example. These are some of the features, and this picture is an example of a passage garden. Now lastly, we'll talk about the sand garden. Sand garden, it is simple in style and devoid of plants, and therefore not liked by the many. Because and the main features of this type of gardening are to arrange a few vertical and prostrate stone in groups of 2 or 3, and to fill the gap in between. And in between with gravels. The gravel is spread in most simple pattern, simulating the ripples of flowing water. The raking has to be repeated often to keep the garden in its best shape. This style of garden looks pleasant. Okay, it looks pleasant and effective only when confined to a limited area. Only. And the most famous sand garden is Ryonji Garden at Kyoto. Okay, so this is one example of a sand garden.